From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Sportsline.
Hey there, Sportsline on your television. Steve Layman with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday on News Channel 5 Plus. The day after the Super Bowl, the Buccaneers are NFL World Champions after beating the Chiefs 31-9, really handily taking care of business in that game yesterday evening on their home field. First ever team to play in their own stadium for the Super Bowl. First ever team to win in their own stadium as Super Bowl champions. And boy, did they have fun, and the city of Tampa enjoyed as much as you can enjoy anything right now during these COVID times in terms of a celebration or a group activity. That's what happened last night, and it was just cool. And actually, let's start there for a second before we dive into the game itself. But I really thought last night was a cool celebration of what football was this season. Remember, there were a lot of people out there in the media and elsewhere that said football should not be played this year. Just shouldn't be played. And we saw the struggle. I mean, it was about 50-50 on the states. It was divided essentially down political lines, which is another topic in the midst of the pandemic. But it was a 50-50 split on whether high school football was going to get played. Now, it eventually moved towards more and more states playing eventually before the season was over. But that was a hard conversation to have. College football. The Big Ten initially canceled its season. So did the Pac-12. So did several other schools across the country. Eventually, they got together and decided that they would play. And the Big Ten and the Pac-12 started in late October or early November and played as much of a season as they could, while other conferences like the ACC and the SEC played throughout the entire course of the year. The NFL was the one league that from the very get-go, back in April and May, as they were making plans for a virtual draft and virtual off-season programs and everything that comes with that, the one thing the NFL held on to was the idea that they were going to play a season this fall. They were going to spend the money on testing. They were going to make sure they had the protocols in place to prevent outbreaks, but they were going to play the season as scheduled. They were going to get in a full 16 games of the regular season. They were going to play a full postseason, and they were going to end on February 7th in Tampa with Super Bowl 55. And there were a lot of people who wrote articles and they talked on shows and they said, that's insane, it can't happen, and it shouldn't happen. It's unsafe. It just should not happen at this point. They wanted them to give up and throw in the towel on the idea of playing football. And to me, the idea that the Super Bowl was played last night was an endorsement of what you can do when you try. And it was also a celebration of how much it meant. We are not back to normal. We're not close yet in terms of society. But as we've battled through the last 5 and 6 months, how nice has it been to have Friday night football and your kids trotting out on a field to be able to play with their friends? How nice has it been to have Saturday college football, to be able to watch your alma mater, or to be able to watch Vanderbilt or Tennessee, somebody that you grew up watching? How nice has it been to have Sunday NFL games and to be able to play on your fantasy team and discuss it with friends or have beers in the late afternoon with a buddy or your spouse at home while watching football? There were people who didn't want that to happen and didn't think it could happen. And it did. And it was incredibly important, I think, for the morale in the country and for just how we felt about what was going on. I think it helped us get through some of the dark days to have that. And oh, by the way, it was safe. It was safe at every level. Yes, there were positive cases. Yes, it caused some disruption here and there, particularly at the college level, where more than anything, I think what we've seen is some of the contact tracing rules that they had were really really tough. You had people who never tested positive, who were held out from practices and games for 2 weeks in certain places. That was difficult. And yes, it caused some games to be canceled. But all in all, you allowed all of these people at the younger ages, the peewee and the high school and the college age, to play a season with their classmates, to go out there and compete and experience the love of the game and the competition and everything that comes with that. At the NFL level, you allowed the sport to go on. Those guys to make their earnings, the league to go on, and for the fans to sit back and enjoy it. And to me, there was something that was just awesome about seeing the finality of the season and how it all came together, and the idea that it was done safely. There were no serious cases tied to any level of football throughout the course of this. There were no contact tracing to other people that had serious cases throughout the course of this. There just weren't. So it proved to be possible that with certain protocols in place and proper testing, that you could go out there and conduct a season, that you could be safe, and that you could play these games at every level. That to me is awesome. It speaks to what we can do when we put our heads together and we try. And you get bright people in a room and you say, okay, this is the situation we're facing. Can we get it done? And football, to me, shows that that can happen. And in some cases, it shows people reversing course when they didn't think it could happen and deciding, you know what, actually, I think we can get this done. And then getting it done. To me, that was awesome. And so there should have been a celebration, and I hope you enjoyed it and took advantage of the day yesterday, that we did get this throughout the course of the year, that we did have a Super Bowl yesterday, that we did celebrate the greatest parts of the game. So I thought that was tremendous. I thought to add into that, there were 25,000 people in the stands yesterday. They did a great job with the cardboard cutouts and things like that too. It actually looked packed in a lot of ways, because when you have 2 or 3 people sitting together and then you have a row of the cardboard color cutouts there, it looks like the row's packed, even though there may only be 3 or 4 people in 12 seats or something along those lines. But it looked good. The stadium looked good. It sounded good, because that was the largest crowd we've seen for a professional sporting event in the U.S. since the pandemic began back in March of last year. It looked good. It sounded good. It just felt good to see that game yesterday and to watch how it played out. And there were great competitors on the field. I thought Patrick Mahomes was excellent in defeat, even though he was running for his life the entire day. I mean, he had some of the most remarkable throws I have ever seen on a football field. And he didn't even get credit for a completion because his receivers couldn't make plays. And then credit Tampa Bay for that. The defense under Todd Bowles, totally different than what we saw back in November when these two teams played for the first time. Secondary was great. The pass rush got after them all night long. Pat Mahomes was running for his life. And then offensively, what can you say? Tom Brady did it again. And I expected him to play well. I'm not sure I expected him to play that well, but everybody else stepped up on the Bucs offense too. And that is the thing to me, and I want to get into this tonight, about the greatness of Tom Brady. And it was clear last night, and it wasn't just in the stat line. He was 21 of 29 for 209 yards and 3 touchdowns that were all in the first half. I mean, that's a good day for any quarterback, especially in the Super Bowl. But it wasn't like he threw for 500 yards or 7 touchdowns. It wasn't that type of a performance. It was a good performance by a good quarterback on a good team. And that makes a fantastic result if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. But to me, the special thing about Brady, and it was made clear to me after the game, is the impact he has on everybody around him. Yes, he's an incredible quarterback. Incredible. But it's the impact that you see him have on everybody else. And it was crystallized to me in these two moments. After the game, watching the Buccaneers celebrate on the field, you had Tom Brady essentially standing there with his family and celebrating. And you just had a steady stream of Buccaneers, including everybody on the defensive side of the field, come up to him and shake his hand and hug him and ask for a picture. And if you really tried to read their lips, the messages they were all giving to Tom were, thank you. I appreciate you. I'm so glad you're here. You made this happen. You got us over the hump. It was all appreciative, and it was all praise, and with a knowledge of what he brought to the table in Tampa. Because remember, this was a good team. There were good pieces on the roster. Mike Evans was there. Chris Godwin was there. Ronald Jones was there. The offensive line was pretty good. That defensive front was really good. There were a lot of pieces in Tampa Bay, and they went 7-9 last year because Jameis Winston was the quarterback. Tom Brady comes in, and now all of a sudden you're a team that runs off 8 straight games. Wins 3 straight games on the road to get to the Super Bowl, and then wins it over a team in Kansas City that everybody was sort of thinking all year long was poised to repeat and be back-to-back champions. Tom Brady is the piece that got all of those guys to go from being good individual pieces, a team with a collection of talented guys, to a really good and together football team. I don't think you can overstate how much Tom Brady did that. And as I was pondering that, I watched Bruce Arians talk last night at the podium in his postgame, or I guess it was on Zoom. And people ask him the impact of Brady. And what Arians said about Brady was a couple things. He said what I said, that this was a talented team before, but not necessarily a good one. He helped bring that out and change the culture there. But the other thing he said is, as a coach this year, I had to step back at times and not overcoach and really allow Tom to take the center stage in the room and coach up his teammates because he's that good at it. And he means that much to the team. And I thought, first of all, props to Bruce Arians, a guy who's a really good football coach, and everybody understands that. And another guy in a league full of egos that could have a big ego about running a team. And for him to realize it's best for him to step back at times says a lot about Bruce Arians. But the idea that he was willing to do that and hand over the reins to a player tells you everything you need to know about Tom Brady. The idea that Tom Brady could stand in front of the room and command everybody's attention on both sides of the ball about what they needed to do and the message they needed to have for that week or that game tells you a lot. And last week, as they were preparing for this game, a Super Bowl, a stage that Brady had been on 9 times before, but many of his teammates had never experienced, he sent out a late-night text message that simply said, guys, we will win. And when that comes from a guy who had already won 6 Super Bowls, that message goes a long way. And that is the type of leadership that Tom Brady brought to Tampa Bay that I don't think can be overstated. You will find other quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes being one of them, that put up better numbers this year. Aaron Rodgers put up better numbers this year. I'm not sure Brady ever had a year like Drew Brees had some years in New Orleans. But when you look at the end of it and how teams perform, and especially how they perform in the postseason, Brady's unparalleled. And in this postseason, he took them in a bunch of rematch games to New Orleans and beat Brees, to Green Bay and beat Rodgers, and then beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. That is an incredible run to cap what has already been an incredible year and an incredible career for Tom Brady, and his Super Bowl legacy just continues to grow. And the final thought on that is this. He now has 7 Super Bowl titles. That is more than any other player in the history of the league. But not just that. That's more than any team in the history of the NFL now has. He won 6 with the Patriots, which tied the Patriots with the Steelers for the most Super Bowl titles in the history of the league. In the very next season, Brady left New England and that dynasty. He went to Tampa Bay, and he won the Super Bowl there to give him 7. That, my friends, is remarkable and tells you all you need to know about the GOAT. Phone lines are open tonight, 737-7767. We want to chat with you on the game, what you thought about the celebration, the end of the season, how the season played out, maybe compared to your expectations when the season began, and about the game itself and what Tom Brady did yesterday, what the Bucs did yesterday in containing and dethroning the Chiefs in that 31-9 victory. We'll take our first break. We'll come back. Phone lines completely open. We'll get to your calls and much more. This is Sports Line on NewsChannel 5+.